Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, it dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is good. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me. Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parish, and I'm joined right now by Rob Fischer. Rob, how's it going?
I'm good, Keith. How are you, man? Getting ready?
I'm getting ready. This is great. I'm actually going on vacation for a week.
Well, there you go.
So
good.
I'm squeezing it in.
Speed it up.
One last one. I think I'm going to miss media day. It's fine. I don't live in town. No big deal. I assume all the reporters there will give me everything I need to know. If there's a scandal, okay, maybe I'll feel bad. But I assume nothing
that's not
controversial.
The case,
If you can do me a favor, if you could trick Taylor Jenkins into saying something that he's not supposed to, it's great for everybody. It's great
Scandalous.
for content.
Yes.
Listen, I've been trying to get Grind City Media on board with, hey, a little impropriety. It's good for business.
Sure.
I know they try to maintain above the board. They maybe possibly have they sent me notes, but hey man, you need to back. I'm like, listen, it's all traffic. All traffic is good, right?
It's happened to the best of them. Just spell the name right, and it's good. It's good, right?
I don't know. Again, I'll say it. I'm an amateur. I don't know what I'm doing. They have not been on board with my all traffic is good argument yet.
Yeah.
But,
okay. We'll keep working on it.
We'll keep working. Try to trip somebody up.
Absolutely.
I've for years just get John Morant to just insult Zion Williamson. Just get him to like he'll never say anything negative. He's always positive. We gotta build these rivalries.
Yeah.
We gotta set some stuff up.
Get some of that sports hate going, like we used to have for the Clippers. We're kind of looking for that team right now. And
I need Kyle Anderson. Now that he's on the Timberwolves, I need him to come out and just be like, you know what, guys, I don't have to say this anymore.
That team.
Memphis barbecue is awful. That would be so good for the league.
Yes, no question.
That's all I'm saying.
And it would start the rivalry. I mean, maybe has started
going
with Minnesota. Maybe we can get that going with Minnesota. That would help. Kyle, yeah, absolutely. We got to get that note to Kyle.
I'm just saying,
start it up.
It sounds like the kind of thing Kyle would say. It's just a real burn some bridges.
Right.
Man, I'm glad I don't eat that Memphis food anymore. Listen to that music. Oh,
yeah, it's terrible. Yeah. Oh, and let me tell you about Elvis. Oh, hey, now, come on. Yeah.
What do you dream of in the off season? But this is what I think. I think of the way we can stoke the fires. We can get those rivalries going. Are you unplugging? Are you just saying I don't need to get embroiled in any controversies?
It usually takes me a week maybe before I get interested and start watching the playoffs. This year was a little different because when the season ended, it was a positive, I mean, it was over and it's always disappointing when it ends and it's long and it's grueling. And, now the season ends and now you're home and, you don't have the gym to go to every night. So it's kind of depressing, but this year it was like, you walked out that last night and you were like, this was good. This was good. I can't wait till next year. And so I started watching right away and watched the rest of the playoffs. And I wind down, spend a lot of time with the kids. We do a lot of work in our backyard. We built a big patio this year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So was doing that. And, I'm doing a baseball podcast on Grind City Media Infield Fly. That's been a lot of fun. So I've been really invested in baseball, maybe more than I have been in a long time. And, and now football starts. And once football starts, I know here we go. Because things get a little crazy for me, football, because then we have the podcast, The Odds Couple. So I'm doing that and watching the games. And then I know, okay, it's time to start prepping for the basketball season too. So kind of set this deadline of early September, a little bit of work every day to get ready for that first broadcast, which will be the first week of October, and which is less than a few weeks
That's
away,
so
which
soon.
is amazing.
It's so soon.
Yeah.
You did, by the way, an amazing job fitting in both of your Grind City Media podcasts.
Thank you very much.
That's why you're the pro. I'm taking notes, man. It's amazing. Yeah, you say like the end of the season, it was happy. Like you lose, you're disappointed. You can even I think a lot of Grizzlies fans like feel like if we've been healthy, like it could have been the Warriors type thing. You're so close. Those games. Also, the Grizzlies had leads. They had leads in the final few minutes of like 3 of the 4 losses.
I tried to convince myself last year when people wanted to say the contender word that I was like, they're not ready. They can't be contenders. It's hard to make them contenders now. But if you ask me if they're contenders in 5 years, I'd say absolutely 100% could win a championship here in the next 5 years. But as the season went on, it was like, well, we have to consider them contenders. 100%. They have the second best record in the league. So you left the season thinking, if this is just another step in the direction that you're going, my goodness, we're in store for a lot of fun.
So it took me a long time last season, like you, I guess, to wrap my head around or wrap my brain around. We are contenders. Right. And one thing I wrestle with now, and maybe it's just a pessimism in me, where I think like, was that our window? I know the team's very young. Like John Morant is so young, and Bane and Jackson and Zaire and everybody's so young, and we envision this bright future. But I always worry, like, are we gonna look back and be like, that actually was our window? Kawhi wasn't playing that year. We took the Warriors, we had them on the ropes, and it's like, should the team have maybe short-circuited their long-term build and like maybe made trades last season? Like, there's no way to know. In like retrospect, we can make it up, but it's one of those things where it's like, was that our point? And then going to the thing about like, even though we lost, I think most Grizzlies fans, you after the initial disappointment, you're excited. You're happy. Mm-hmm. You're like, man, that was amazing. Like, what a season. There's even for me, I had just relief that we beat the Timberwolves. Like relief that we didn't fall on our faces. Like that for me, I joked about it on social media. I honestly feel this way. That was my Super Bowl. My Super Bowl was not losing in the first round, because that just makes this exciting, like quote unquote ahead of schedule season. It feels all right. There was no big disappointment, but now there are expectations. Yeah. It's no longer, hey, we're happy to be here. Hey, we won 56 games. Like it's, if the Grizzlies lose in the first round this year, it's going to be like huge disappointment. Like if you take a step back, and then I turn to like my memory of Grizzlies history of the grit and grind era, where they were great for several years in a row, but the playoff success, it was every other. It was like every other year. Like we won a series, and the next year we lost in the first round. And then we had close first round losses, but it was something about like, I've kind of conditioned myself to like worry, like, all right, we made the second round. Does that mean we're going to
miss an opportunity?
Yeah. Like, or just whatever. Like, I don't know. Like, are you in that mode where you understand, like, it's not all icing on the cake anymore? I feel like last year, the whole season was just like, we're not supposed to be here. And no question. And now it's like, oh, we are supposed to be here. Now, when we lose games, people are going to be mad in the regular season. And then it's like, if the team is, maybe Jaren takes a while getting back, and if the team is 17-13, it's just going to be like, is it going to be panic? Like type thing. And so like, are you approaching the season differently? Or do you recognize that maybe mentally you're thinking about it like, we can't let up, and also like this year is going to be maybe not as joyful, which is like a scary thing to say,
No, you're exactly. I mean, because everything last year, it felt magical. I mean, when they were winning games and they were on a winning streak, it was magical. When they beat Minnesota, it was magical. When they were taking Golden State in that series, it was like, boy, what a year. I mean, this was great. And the jaw games and everything that we can point out, and Jaren's defense and Desmond Bane, what he's become, and all of those things where they were so joyous and just surprising. I compared it a lot to, I used to cover the St. Louis Rams, and they went from, being horrible, and they got another year, or they're going to fire their coach. Everything's going to be torn apart, and they become the greatest show on turf, and they go win the Super Bowl. And that whole season, every time they were scoring, you're just up there laughing, like, how is this happening? Who is this team?
Why
do
you have to make me think about? Why do you have to make me think about this, Rob? Why do you got to bring up Kevin Dyson at the 1 yard line? The Tennessee. I'm a Titans fan.
I know. I'm sorry. I know.
No, I know. It's a perfect.
And I'm Team Tennessee now.
No, I'm glad to have you on board. No, I remember that perfectly. It's a perfect analogy.
But it was like everything.
It was out of the blue,
unexpected. Yes.
How are the Rams scoring 40 points every week? Type thing.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that clearly. Yes.
And last year, you're seeing them, win a game by 70. You're seeing them win multiple games by 20, 25 points, and it's like, how is this? I mean, are we really that good? I mean, it was incredible. So, and this year now, it's completely different. It's you go into this season now, as you said, with expectations, and margin of error is smaller because now you're not trying to just be a top 6 seed, which I think was your goal last year.
Of course.
Now your goal is top 4 at the worst. So, those regular season games on a Tuesday in Charlotte that you give up a lead and you lose. I mean, those are going to come back and haunt you, and you're going to have haunting losses this year. Those will happen, but you'll feel miserable after those losses because your expectation is to win most nights and to be a top 4 seed. And yeah, with those expectations, it's great. And I think this team will embrace those expectations. I think a lot of the national, media and probably rightfully so, when you look at the other teams, will still underrate the Grizzlies and say that maybe, when you look at playoff teams, maybe they're not the one that terrifies them or anything. And the Grizzlies will use that as kind of motivation. I mean, I can't wait, because now that the expectation is there, what does Desmond Bane do to get better? What does John Morant do to get better? What does Jaren do when he comes back to get better? I mean, these guys, we talk about it being young, and we talk about a window. Well, to reach that window, to reach what you want to accomplish, these guys all have to get better. So I'm looking forward to that. Zaire, his improvement, what you want to see from year 1 to year 2. Just you want to look at this year as another step. And if it's another step from last year, this year's going to be a lot of fun.
When you were talking about how, there is that expectation, but perhaps there's internal expectation, there's fan base expectation, but externally, national media wise, maybe they are still being underrated. And maybe it is a blessing in disguise that Jaren is on the shelf and that they lost Melton and Kyle Anderson, because, I don't know if sports narratives actually affect a locker room or have any bearing on anything whatsoever, but I can definitely envision this idea of it's actually good that the external expectations maybe are a little bit lower, because we can still do the no one believes in us type thing. If people are like, oh, the Grizzlies are like the 10th best team now, and I expect them to get passed by the Nuggets and the Clippers and whoever else, because who's going to be your opening night starting power forward? So maybe that will in fact work for the Grizzlies. Also thinking back to that, the greatest show on turf, and how last year when similarly the Grizzlies were just blowing everybody out. Pretty sure the stat was the Grizzlies had the 3rd most 25-point wins in a season ever in NBA history last year. I compared it to it felt like college basketball. This is not supposed to happen in the NBA.
No,
this feels like the Runnin' Rebs, or that one year that Auburn was good with Chris Porter, where it's all of a sudden out of the blue, Auburn, who's not a good college basketball school, until the last couple of years, I guess, historically not a great school. I remember this, I think I was in college at that point, and it was suddenly they're beating every team by 20, 25. They're pressing the entire game. They're forcing all these turnovers. And the Grizzlies had a similar blueprint where you don't see this in the NBA. And you had nights where the Grizzlies, made 10 3-pointers. It wasn't like they did one of those Rockets or Warriors. Yeah, we won by 30 because we made 22 threes. The Grizzlies made the same or fewer threes than their opponent. They just forced so many turnovers. They got so many fast break points. It's we won 25 again. Or we were up at halftime 75-50. It's wild. I'm not used to seeing this in the NBA. And I assume that magic is still there. It wasn't just a random occurrence of last season, a perfect concoction of the different players that were in the locker room. I am optimistic and hopeful. That's just the culture. That's the team. It starts with, I don't know who it starts with. It starts with John Morant. He's your most talented on-court guy. There's the front office leadership. There's Taylor Jenkins and the coaching staff. My dream is this is the culture now. And maybe they can become a Spurs-like organization where, you have Hall of Famers. You have Tim Duncan. You have Manu Ginobili. You have Tony Parker. For the Grizzlies, you have Desmond Bane. You have John Morant. You have Jaren Jackson Jr. But there is a plug-and-play element where every night, if Duncan sits out, well, guess what? Back in the day, the Spurs still won, and they still won comfortably. That's what
the Grizzlies did last year.
Yeah.
And that's what the Grizzlies did. I think. I think the culture, it's an organizational thing. I mean, you could say it could start with the front office, because they seem to bring in a type of player that seamlessly fits in with their core group. as far as the performance on the floor, yeah, I think Taylor Jenkins deserves a lot of credit. I mean, he, David Fizdale tried to force a new culture in Memphis. He tried to force the Miami Heat culture in Memphis, and he's putting up championship trophies, and he's he's coming up with all these sayings, and it was like, it just didn't work. He didn't have the personnel to come in and be an alpha and force a new culture on Marc Gasol. It just wasn't going to happen. Taylor Jenkins came in, and it was a young team, and he didn't force anything. What he did was he reached out to everybody. He had dinners with all of the players. He was in constant contact with the players. He told them up front what he expected of them. He told them who was the leader and the guys who are the leaders and what he expects from a leadership standpoint. It was constant communication. And I'm lucky enough to be in the huddle during every timeout. And I've seen it, going back to Mark Ivoroni. I've seen the best and I've seen the worst. And Taylor Jenkins is one of the best, because one of the key things in a timeout and in a huddle, in an NBA huddle, is if you have the players' attention. If they're truly listening, or are they just there? They truly listen, but it's not just them listening to him. He listens to them. There's a lot of player feedback during timeouts, and he listens to it. And sometimes we'll go with it. Sometimes it just adds on to what they're talking about. But it's listened to, and it's respected, and it's believed. So I think these guys believe that they got the respect of the coach at a young age to kind of tell them what they're thinking. And he has the respect of the players to tell them what he's thinking, and they go out and execute it. I think it's a great dynamic. It's an incredible culture. Winning. Now let's talk about reality.
It's right.
Winning helps culture. I mean,
winning. I think I've heard that a lot of times. Like that joke, like culture. If you're losing, you don't have culture.
All of a sudden, people are bickering. It's like, oh, the culture is gone. But that can happen. But as long as this team's winning, I think the relationships they have, and to bring in a guy like Steven Adams, who's old for this team, for him to fit in with these young guys, to fit in with the coach, and to just do his part. It's what everybody does on this team, and everybody's kind of fit the role. And, I think one of the big things you look at it this year is, what's going to be the role of these rookies? How much time are they going to get? How many of them are going to be NBA ready to contribute to a rotation when the season starts?
Is that for you the biggest question going into this year? Is there something else? Like, I think we're all concerned, like, what if, we're optimistic because we're fans. We're like, all right, Laravia and Roddy had these skills, and Kenneth Lofton Jr. was awesome in summer league, and
we've drafted well.
And lately. And so you give them a little bit benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, we've seen this front office find diamonds in the rough or later in the draft, but like, if those guys aren't ready, that seems like a problem. Like, is that the biggest question for the Grizz this year, or is it something else for you?
I was surprised, because going into the draft, I told anybody who would listen that I'd be completely shocked if the Grizzlies drafted 3 guys. Well, they drafted 4, so I was I was right. You're so right. I wasn't wrong. but because now you got and I mean, no disrespect to these guys, everybody fills a role on the team, but you're better when your first 10 are the ones that are playing your best. Now you feel confident, or at least I think you're getting there, and hopefully even more confident that Aldama can go in and fit in and play. Tilly can fit in and he can go in and play. If you need guys, somebody's out, they can fit in that role and they can be fine. But you can't have 4 more guys at the end of your bench that can't. I mean, so I'm hoping, I think your hope is 1 to 2 can be consistent, getting minutes, rotation. John Konchar minutes, what we've seen in the past. Somebody can perform like that. DeAnthony Melton minutes. I mean, I know you thought DeAnthony got fewer minutes than maybe he deserved, but get those minutes. Can somebody contribute those minutes to this team this year? And I think that's going to be a big question and a big hope, because all of a sudden, if guys are banged up and you're playing back-to-backs, the guys have to sit out a game, who can come in and contribute? And those guys are going to need to.
So, I mean, you rightfully point out, and I know I should talk about Melton less, but like you rightfully point out, like I thought Melton should play more, but Melton was 6th on the team in minutes per game last year. Yeah, and he played a lot of minutes, and someone's got to take those minutes. And part of my concern with this Grizzlies offseason is that like they have, like you look at that 10 deep roster, they've promoted guys. Like Konchar was 11th on the depth chart, or maybe 12th on the depth chart last year. And now you're like, is he 8th? Or is he not? I mean, probably 9th, I guess. You assume off the bench, when fully healthy, Tyus Jones, Brandon Clark, Zaire Williams. Those are your 6, 7, 8 guys, I'm guessing, in minutes per game. And then is 9th now Konchar, or is it Tillman? And these are guys who got DNPs sometimes last year when the team was fully healthy. And so, like, for me, that's kind of like the big.
Well,
I don't want to. Yeah.
Grind City Media is doing a camp countdown thing where a bunch of us come up with a storyline of what to watch for in camp. And one of mine was John Konchar, which sounds kind of silly. Like, wait a second. What does Konchar have to do with it? John Konchar was great when he'd come in for 9 minutes and he'd give you 6, 7 rebounds. He'd give you 5 points, get you a steal, was always in the right spot. He's cutting to the basket and everything. Okay. And he shoots 40% from 3. I mean, that's fine. What happens now when he gets 20? What's going to happen when he's getting 20 minutes a night? Can he be that guy for 20 minutes? Can he? And I'm not saying double all those numbers. I'm not saying John Konchar needs to give us 18 and 15 on a consistent basis. What I'm saying is
that the Timberwolves game.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, can you give me 8 points with an occasional 15, maybe an occasional 4? But can you give me about 8 or 9 a night? Can you give me 6 or 7 rebounds a night? Can you shoot 40% from 3 when you're going to be shooting more threes? Okay, yes. Give me 36%, 35%, and then we can talk. He's going to be given every opportunity to get those minutes. He needs to take advantage of it, and I think the question is, can he, when given more time, perform? And I looked at his numbers last year. When he played 20 or more minutes, his numbers were obviously better, and some of his best games were. But he had too many games where he scored under 5 points when he played 20 minutes. When you're playing 20 minutes, man, you got to get, if you're going to be one of my top 10 guys and get those minutes consistently, I'm going to need more than that.
Yeah. He obviously has those great percentages of the shooting percentages, the shooting splits. And he had that stretch. I don't remember the exact figure, but he had a stretch where it's like, he's made 14 of his last 23 pointers or something, but it was over like 23 games. So it's like, that's awesome. You can say over the last 23 games, over the last 4th of the season, this man's shooting 65% from 3 or whatever it was. But it's like, yeah, but he's taking 1 a game or less. And it's like, now if he's going to be playing more, we need you to shoot probably 3 times a game. In the playoffs, he had moments, and this is anecdotally, I haven't like tracked it or mapped it out. He had moments where like, all right, they're turning to Konchar this night to see if he has it. Like this, maybe it was the Timberwolves series where like Melton had fallen out of the rotation, and the ball would swing to him and he wouldn't shoot. He would put it on because I understand that. He's like, my job is not to mess up. And so I think if you're getting promoted in the rotation, if you get more minutes, your job is no longer just not to mess up on offense. You have to do stuff. You can't play 4-on-5. You have to take the shot when it's there. It's a big opportunity. I mean, it's exciting.
Oh yeah.
It's exciting to do that
thing
where you're
given
like
every chance.
We're like, analytics love his impact in the small minutes. What happens if we turn that dial up? We turn the minutes dial up. Yes. Well, if the impact stays the same, it'll be a great thing for the Grizz this year.
Yeah. And it'll be a great thing for him. I mean, the Grizzlies took a chance, giving him the contract last year, and now let's see what you got. Go do it. You'll be given every chance to do it. So that's great. Obviously, the biggest question for the team is what happens at the 4 when the season starts. With Jaren out, and I think that's a big question. I think there's a large sample size of Brandon Clark not being a very, very good when he's in the starting lineup. So I think you'd like to kind of keep him where he's at. Now he might be given a chance to be that guy, but if it's not, where do you go from there? Who's it going to be? Is it going to be one of the rookies? I mean, are you going to go extremely small and put Dylan Brooks out there and just kind of mix and match when you're defending? That's something that's going to have to be figured out in camp, and something you're going to have to get through here in the first part of the season.
Yeah, big question. Like the guys they drafted outside of, well, they didn't draft Lofton. Well, the guys they literally drafted, where you thought maybe they were 4s when they played summer league, they kind of run the perimeter. They were kind of like those just wings. When Laravia played, there were normally two other bigger guys on the court with him. So it's like, that is the huge question. Like what do they do there? And I don't know. I mean, I think we're all guessing until we see a preseason game, until like October 1st, they're playing the Bucks. Maybe there'll be an open practice where we'll get some glimpses of like who's running. I know I do the thing every year when they release on social media, they release like an edited 1 minute clip of the team practicing. I'm like writing down who's on each squad. I'm like, well, all right, they won't give us any information.
Is that guy starting?
Yeah. I'm like who's running with who? I remember like years ago,
wearing white today?
It was like it looks like Winslow's running with the twos, guys. Winslow's running, and so I can't wait until the preseason. I'm too impatient. I need to figure out. Yeah, that is the huge question. I
think it'll be interesting, how many guys will be given an opportunity. Yeah. Who's the list of guys that, because I don't think it'll be when the first preseason game starts, that's going to be the guy. I think it's going to be, we're going to try this. Game 2, we'll try this. Game 3, we'll try this. But what are going to be the options? What are those options that you're going to try?
I might get myself in trouble here, but I think in each of the last 2 seasons, when there was a lineup question, I'm specifically thinking of the year where it was like, all right, is it going to be Grayson Allen, or is it going to be Desmond Bain, or is it going to be Anthony Melton? And the preseason, like Grayson Allen started. And I was like, I wouldn't have guessed that. And then I want to say, like, then they switched it up in the preseason. But then, of course, on opening night, it was Grayson Allen who started the first preseason game. So I feel like, and again, should have checked my notes before just saying this extemporaneously. I feel like the things we've seen on preseason game 1s have actually been great clues to what actually is going to happen come opening night. So I'm going to say, like, if everybody's healthy, of course, if everyone besides Jaren is healthy, I think maybe whatever we see in that first preseason game could be like, well, that's probably, that could be what it is. Of course, there could be a whole training camp where someone could prove that they're more deserving.
Yeah. And that makes sense because, the first one, it's like, all right, well, this is what we've seen in camp. This is what we think works. Let's go ahead and go for it. So it's probably your leading option going into the preseason. So, if that's your leading option, you play with it for a game or 2 and then see what the other ones do and just see. So maybe you come back to your leading option. So that would make sense. I'd pay attention to it, maybe more than normal. Problem is in preseason, you're right, with injuries and things like that. It's like you just, you woke up wrong and your neck hurts a little bit. You're not playing, So it's like that's things like that. So sometimes you don't get a great gauge.
Also, preseason can be misleading. Very famously, Mario Chalmers was incredible when he was like post Achilles playing for the Grizzlies, and it's like we don't have a roster spot, but this guy was amazing. This is the answer to everything we need for the Grizzlies, and then it wore off real fast. It was like once the rookie season started, it was like Chalmers doesn't have anymore. No. That's not great.
Which was too bad.
Rob, thanks for your time, man. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Do you have any other Grind City Media podcasts you need to plug? Or
Let's
get out of here? I think you did an Odds Couple.
Odds Couple. Fly. We're live every Thursday now. At 10 o'clock.
Nice.
Live, so that's a little pressure.
Check that out.
And then the Infield Fly, talking baseball. So still doing those, and we'll be doing those throughout football and baseball. So look forward to it.
That's great.
And look forward to the season getting started, man.
Absolutely. So thanks again, and talk to you soon.
You got it.